Okay, well, since I had my wheel off again, I thought I'd give you a look at something that I did last time. Basically, the axle sits in here, right? And you can see that because it's a slot, very clearly, especially if you look down here, you can see it's a slot. It's because the axle's got parts of the sides shaved off. That's so that when power is applied, the only thing, it's not magic, that is holding the axle from spinning is the fact that the axle isn't round where it goes through that slot, which means that it twists in the fork to hold the to hold the axle so that it can turn the wheel instead of the axle just spinning in the slot, right? Because that wouldn't be much fun. So if we have a look in real close, just see if I can bring up the exposure a bit, you can see that there's some marks in there that look remarkably like the thread. Now, it's unsurprising to see them up around the top here because they get, flogged as bumps go for things. And actually, it's worth pointing out how important it is that that nut actually gets tightened up so that it sits in there, because even if the nut's slightly loose, right, you can see that it's held in there by the fact that it's circular on the collar, right? So that's an important part of this system. So it's not just any nut works. So what I've found though is that you can see that down this part of the thread, it's been copping a flogging, whereas it doesn't cop a flogging on the other side, because actually it's twisting around up at the top, and you might just be able to see indications of the top of the thread getting mashed into that. So basically, this whole system is getting pretty close to having too much play in it. So what I've done, and I've actually measured the play, is that I've made these little shims up out of aluminium, and they sit more or less over the axle, and you can see that they've been copping a bit of a pounding already. And people want regen brakes so that it pounds the other side. Anyway, suppose having no idea of how these magical things work allows you to have magical thinking about how the magic should work. Unfortunately, physics is a harsh mistress. So anyway, basically, that tolerance is taken up by that shim. Now, the shim is just a piece of aluminium flashing, which I bought from a hardware shop. You've got to buy a bit of it. That's a pain in the ass, but it still was $10 for a lifetime supply. As it happens, I have it lying around because I go camping a fair bit, and I use that flashing as a heat shield around my camping stove, but that's because I'm funny. Now, the thickness that I used was 0.3 mil, and you can see it's not real thick at all. You've got to be careful with the thickness you buy, because you don't want to get the thick one. I think Coke can is a bit too thin, but you could give it a bash. I'll just put the wheel in there, and you can have a look at it. Okay, so we've got it sat here, ready to go in, and I've got the shims onto the axles. You can just see them sort of sitting there now, and that'll tap in nicely. But you can see that the shims actually make it a lot more of a snug fit than it used to be, and that's good, because basically, when the twisting forces of the motor occur, they'll be applied more or less exactly down here, and now I've got far less twisting. I'll twist the other end. You can see how much twisting there is in there now. There was a couple of mil of movement at the end of the spanner, but now you can see that that's nice and tight. Let me just do a quick zoom in. See, sorry about the ugly work. Yeah, it's about as close as it gets. So you can see that it's barely rotating at all, and that's excellent. Now, you don't have to worry too much about how much of the aluminium is poking out. Couple of fractions of a mil won't hurt. The bolt is going to actually push it back in. But I'll just come around on the other side over here, and you can see on the other side that a little bit of the shim is poking through, but it's nothing major. So there you go. That'll actually make the whole wheel sit better, and it'll prevent this from getting chewed out as much by this, because I mean that's steel, right? And that's aluminium, so it's kind of going to dig in. So that's actually all good. You want it to be a snug fit, but you don't want to have to, you know, bash its head in. But it'll probably require. This is the second time I fitted it, so you need to bend it around the axle to make sure that it fits snug. And you get a pair of scissors and trim it up so it's the right width and length and stuff like that, right? It's not hard, it's pretty thin stuff to cut. So there you go.